be kind. And subscribe.
It's for you.
Strange that you and I have never spoken on the phone. This is long overdue.
What is this place?
A shrine.
Did you miss me?
He's gonna keep coming after us. Maybe he gets to win this time. We've got to lure him in. And we execute him.
Scream.
I hear you're a horror fan.
It's been said.
Everywhere Friday.
Welcome on, bienvenue to the United Nations of Horror with your hosts, Mark and Jason. Hi, Jason.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. Looking forward to this one. We're talking about Scream 6, Scream VI, whatever you want to call it, the latest Scream. And I did see in the week, number 7's been greenlit. And they're
oh wow!
So it's going to keep rolling. It's going to keep rolling.
And the franchise will never die.
Yes, Scream. Well, do horror franchises ever die?
You know, good ones usually not.
only if they're studio bound, like the Universals and the Hammers. Finally,
but yes, true.
These days, you know, we'll get another Jason. We'll get another Freddy.
Oh, I think we will. Yeah,
and we're getting Hellraisers, and so on. Chucky's, they'll all keep rolling because horror's like that.
And lots of good new IPs too.
Now, I did put out a note asking for feedback on this, and we got a lot of good feedback. Now, some of it talks about the character development in the film. So, what we figured is we'll do the feedback at the end. But we have got a lot of feedback, just so everyone knows. So we are going to cover it at the end of our discussion about the movie. Then we'll circle back to the feedback and sort of go through that and pick the bones out of that.
And we appreciate all the feedback and everyone who takes time to do that. It's really really cool to hear from everyone. And for those who don't know, please check out the I'll go ahead and plug it, the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/UN of Horror. And of course, you can leave a comment on our Facebook videos as well, and we appreciate that, as well as any podcasting outlets you may listen to us on. But we primarily talk on Facebook. It's just a small group, which I like. I think it's more personable in a lot of ways.
It's not that small though. It's quite a lot of members, but we have a core number of people that interact quite rapidly, and they're very friendly. They're very friendly people. So, but we're always happy to sort of have other people in the conversation too. And everyone's got different opinions, and that's kind of keeps it interesting. If we all agreed, it'd be boring.
It would.
It would be boring.
But I think everyone is really respectful, which I always appreciate,
Yeah, or they get banned.
yeah, exactly. But, you can't say that about a lot of groups. So
okay, so this is the last installment. Sorry, the most recent installment of Scream 6. Though 7 is greenlit and coming. And this one was directed by Matt Hold on, I'm gonna just adjust my teeth here. Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett. That wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And written by James Vanderbilt, who I think wrote Scream 5, and Guy Busick. So it's pretty much a direct sequel to 5. Basically, the new characters we were introduced to in 5 are the main characters in this, other than Gal. What's her name? Gal Tate? I always forget. Courtney Cox, basically. It's Gal Weathers. Gal Weathers, of course, is.
Yeah, Weathers, yeah.
Yeah, so it's...
The Queen of Mean.
Yeah. The main characters are played by Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega as sisters, and we have various other people returning that were also in number 5. And, you know, the only character we're getting from the old original is Gail Weathers, because Dewey didn't make it to this one. But still quite sad about that, yes.
Me too, man.
I thought they might just put his riff in when they talked about him, but no, we didn't get any of that.
Yeah.
It's very cool riff. He's way cooler than him, that's for sure. But, well, he's cool in his own way. He's cool in his own way.
Oh, yeah.
I'd say I really like the intro to this one, that with Samara Weaving, right? As
I did too.
Film professor. I thought that was an interesting take and way of approaching it. I like Samara Weaving. There's a great film she's in, which is kind of horror adjacent. It's called Ready or Not. And you know The Hunt. We really enjoyed The Hunt, right?
Indeed.
Ready or Not's got a very similar vibe. In that it's, you know, humans hunting humans kind of film, which I always enjoy.
Right.
I always enjoy those films. Samara Weaving is fantastic in it.
Nice.
So at some point, I wouldn't mind covering it. Actually,
Yeah, we should. We should.
Yeah, it would be an excellent double bill with The Hunt. They're two of a kind. But Samara Weaving pops up. You know, they always have a famous face at the beginning of Scream, don't they? Who gets some sort of phone call, and then bad things happen. And Samara Weaving.
I knew when she got that phone call, if I can talk. When she got that phone call and she was at the bar, I was like, oh, okay, this is not going to end well. But it's cool because we find that we're in a new setting very quickly. We're in New York City as opposed to California in the films.
And it's interesting. There was it was real interesting that it was set in a big, New York rather than where it's usually set. That kind of made it quite a different place. Now, did that work for you?
I think it did. I was kind of surprised because, you know, typically there's a lot more space in like a place like California, you know. So I was thinking the film would feel more claustrophobic living in New York. And, you know, you saw the preview that was on the train. And so you get a little bit of that, but not as much as I thought, actually. They still managed to keep a lot of the chase elements. How about you, Mark? Did it work for you?
Oh, yeah, it totally worked for me. Yes, I was very happy with this. And it felt fresh, really. I felt this was a real... Right, I have to say, 5 for me, it was almost like... You know, here's all the new characters we're introducing. And it was almost like 5 was a setup, putting chess pieces in the right places. And I feel like it's paid off, because now when we get to 6, it's all ready to go. And I really like that. And the elements in 5, you know, the rather interesting elements in 5 around... parentage, should we say? I mean, I'm not trying to be coy. We're having spoilers in this section. Actually, we'll not do spoilers in a minute. We'll give our opinions and then we'll get into spoiler territory. I felt like they really put the pieces were in place in it, and it was ready to go, and it kind of ramped straight off. And I quite liked it. Let's talk about our general opinions and then get into spoilers. So, what overall? What do you think?
I thought very good. You know, I don't think it's quite as good for me as 5 was, but I do agree that the fact that they set up so much has very much paid off here. They were able to play off all that, and you know, the characters in 5 were just so well done and memorable. So everybody you remember like is here, and you're like, oh, they're back. You know, that's cool. Yeah. I don't think it's as maybe unique as 5, but you know, again, it's going on a formula, right? Yeah. And they're trying to mix that formula up, and of course, at the end of the day, Scream is a lot of it is a whodunit, and or who is doing it, I should say.
Yeah.
So we've got our, we're guessing who's Ghostface the entire film.
Yeah.
And so I think it works well. I don't think it's the best Scream film, but I think it is better than some of the other Scream films. We'll probably kind of put them in order at the end if you want to.
Yeah, we can do that.
And yeah. How about you?
I really enjoyed this. I thought it was better than 5. I actually like this one as a stand. I feel like I can watch this as a standalone. Whereas 5, you feel like it's got a lot of legacy, and they felt. I think the writing made them feel. Some of the characters feel a bit like a skin job rather than a well-rounded character. Whereas I didn't feel that. Certainly not for the sisters in this one. There was a few where it was very shallow, but it didn't matter much. It didn't matter much. And with Scream, and the problem I always have with Scream, because Scream's not my favourite franchise. I don't mind it, but there's lots of horror franchises I much prefer. They always have a ridiculous reasons why this happened. Almost all of them are ridiculous. Someone becomes a psycho killer cause something, and it's not realistic in any kind of way in terms
Thank goodness.
Yeah, that's true. But it's okay. I quite enjoy them when I'm watching them. So for me, actually, no, I quite like 6. I liked it more than 5, and I liked it more than at least one of the ones before that, I'd say. But I don't want to get into it too much. So pretty good. Okay, we'll descend into spoiler territory from this point, because we'll start talking about what happens during the film. So if you haven't watched the film, go watch it.
Yeah,
it's a recommend from us.
Support horror, right?
Yeah. Now, apparently, Neve Campbell was intended to be in this film, but they couldn't agree pay, so she didn't appear.
Which is a little bit of shame, but in a way, I don't know that it hurts it, because I feel like I think the two sisters, they're both strong enough actresses and characters now to kind of stand on their own. Now, don't get me wrong. I love Neve Campbell, as I have expressed in previous episodes.
Yeah, she's great.
But yeah, she's an outstanding actress, and but at the same time, I think if you are trying to continue this franchise, it's got to be able to continue without her at some point. And if she comes back at some point, that's great. But this was almost like a big test to see if this film, or if this franchise rather, could survive on its own, and thankfully it can. We got the numbers, and we'll talk about that.
It's got the premise. It's got this interesting through line with these sisters that they're now basically Sydney used to be the target of copycats, and now it's these two. So that's kind of moved on, and that's fine. It grossed. It's the first installment in the franchise to gross more than 100 million in domestic US since Scream 2. Scream 2 is the oh no, hold on, it's also Scream 6. It's the highest grossing Scream film.
Oh, is it now?
But that's not adjusted for inflation, so yeah. It also won the best movie at the MTV Awards. Best movie it won.
I do want to go see this in theaters, and again, I always like to see things in theaters, but with life going on this past year, it's been a little difficult to get out to the theaters. So hopefully, I'm going to be doing more theatrical horror releases soon. But I do wish I could have seen this in the theater. I think it would have been really fun with an audience. Now you watched it at home too, right, Mark?
Yeah. I thought, I wouldn't mind seeing it in theaters, but I'm happy to watch it at home too. The thing about these films is I don't find them in any way scary at all. Not at all. No. They're fun though, and they can be exciting. There's definitely sections where, certainly when Ghostface is, because Ghostface is kind of relentless, and one of the things we commented about Ghostface is he's got almost supernatural powers of knowing where people are or where they're going to go, which is always ridiculous because this is not a supernatural entity, right?
Yeah, he can be anywhere at any time. So
yeah, and there is a
kinda
precedent also that Ghostface is more than one person. There is that precedent from the earlier movies. So you never quite know if it's one or two or three or four or five. You know, you just never know. Now, this one has an interesting setup in that we see Ghostface straight away, don't we?
Oh,
as soon as he does the murder, which is an interesting twist. But it's a mislead, isn't it? It's not the Ghostface we think it's going to be. This is...
No.
Again, the premise for murder is silly in these films. This one doesn't like his film professor or something. I'm really not even sure what the motivation was here.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of got the impression like these two were going out, college student and an older professor, and she, he was obsessed with the Stabbed films, and decided that he wanted to, start basically copycatting Ghostface, which he does, and it's in like almost I don't want to say broad daylight, but it's like early evening in New York. And I thought about that for a minute when it happened, and I was like, man, like these people just walked past, nobody paid attention. But then, I remember reading a story a couple of years ago that actually someone was murdered in New York City. And someone was like, the woman was like screaming and everything, and like no one paid any attention to it. Apparently,
it's a famous guy, Kitty Gervais in New York. It's famous from the 50s. It was a sort of bit analysed quite a lot about mob mentality and responsibility.
Right.
When you're only one of many that could do something about it, you have a diminished response. You feel that you're not entirely responsible,
right?
Or not.
Right.
Even responsible at all. It's quite sad, really. But yeah,
it is.
Interesting. I was wondering, this professor's name, Laura Crane, right? Now they do like their referencing, like the Carpenter sisters are in this. But firstly, I thought of Laura Palmer from Twin Peaks for Laura, and Crane. I thought of Marion Crane from Psycho, right? So I just wondered if they were kind of nods to those. And the murder is pretty brutal. Samara, what made me laugh is Samara Weaving is drop dead gorgeous, and she's having to get dates on, I don't know, Tinder or something.
Yeah, right.
Blind dates, and she's wearing a fantastic dress. It's like, oh my God, is Tinder really like this?
I don't know, but
I don't think
I need to be on Tinder.
If my wife would let me, I'd be on Tinder. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, so there's that. So they're living in New York. So the other characters from number 5 are the brother and sisters, Chad and Mindy, right?
Indeed, yeah.
And
very memorable, very likable,
Yeah, and there's also they're living with a roommate called Quinn, who is. She enjoys herself. Let's put it that way. There's some quite funny jokes about it throughout. Like, actually, we'll come to it when we talk about the scene. But there is the usual Scream scene where they're explaining the rules for this version of the movie. How they always do that in Scream films. There's also Mindy's girlfriend's living with them, and then another nerdy kind of guy called Ethan. As well. Well, they're not all living together, but they all know each other. They're a group that know each other. But some of them live in the same place.
Yeah,
right?
kind of the Scooby-Doo group of the franchise now, I guess, if you will.
Yeah.
With some new members, some cannon fodder, if you will.
Yeah. Now the older sister, Sam, played by let me check her name. I never get this right. Melissa Barrera. She kind of finds that people were kind of avoided her because there's an online conspiracy started that she actually orchestrated all the murders that happened in 5 for whatever reason, right? She's the actual murderer, and she gets into fights with people and these kind of things like that. And there's also the younger sister Tara, Jenna Ortega, kind of living. They kind of got a slightly dysfunctional relationship. In fact, there's a bit of therapy going on, isn't there? There's therapy sessions and stuff like that.
A lot of people have bought into this conspiracy theorist kind of thing too, which I think is a comment on modern culture and rightfully so with conspiracy theories nowadays, especially from the kind of far right. But I think it is kind of a well-made point, at least a fairly well-made point that, you can just sort of make up anything on the internet and the public will buy it. And, and sometimes it's a shame, really. I think people go to the internet a little bit too much for their information. Yeah. And this film sort of says so.
Yeah,
So,
there's a little pastiche on that. What happens then? Basically, Ghostface attacks the two, doesn't he? And starts, and it's quite brutal. But he leaves behind a mask, which they managed to DNA date back to the, I think, the Scream 4 killings.
Indeed. I thought, they're going the Halloween route with the old masks, Now, I don't know if they had any ideas from that or not, but I thought it was cool kind of bringing back in the older masks throughout the film.
Yeah.
I thought it worked.
Yeah, it was fine. But what that does is they then talk to a detective who happens to be Quinn's, the roommate, the noisy roommate, Quinn's father, Wayne. But also, who else turns up? Someone from Scream 4. Kirby Reed, who is Hayden Panettiere. I never say this right. Panettiere, the actress Hayden. Is it Hayden? Let me think.
I think you've got that right. Now I'm trying to look.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I used to watch her in Heroes. I know her quite well, but I never get the name.
Yeah, you're right.
Panettiere.
I think we discussed that the last episode.
And it turns out she's in the FBI. So she's in the FBI and got an interest in the case as well. So she's kind of hanging around too.
Now,
and
did you buy her in the FBI, Mark?
No, she looked way too young.
Yeah, Gail comments on that, says like you're like 20 or something like that, or no, she says like you're a baby, and I was like, yeah, she does look just way too young.
She isn't though. I mean, as a person, she must be 35 now, something like that. But she looks pretty.
Yeah, she looks like she's 18, maybe.
Yeah, we get Gail Weathers, who definitely doesn't look 18. So she mentions she's talked to Sydney, who's now in hiding. That's how they cover that thing. So it's possible Neve Campbell might come back in the next one. But we also see Sam has a therapy session about talking about like the conspiracies around her and what happened. We also find out Tara is also scheduled for therapy but doesn't go. That's kind of mentioned. She just wants to forget it, presumably. So what we then see is we see a section where the therapist is sitting watching a horror movie, right? He's watching Invasion of the Body Snatchers, I think.
Is that one? I wasn't sure right off, but I was like, I know I've seen that before.
Yeah. And there's a knock at the door, and Ghostface comes, just brutalizes him and steals Sam's medical notes. Right?
Yeah, not the best therapist anyway, because he turns her away essentially when he finds out that she's related to Billy Loomis, which, I was like, that's messed up, man.
Yeah. That doesn't help.
No.
So Mindy starts sort of theorizing the killer, whoever it is following the horror movie conventions, and Chad and Mindy, I think it's particularly Mindy, right, lays out all of these sort of this is I can't even remember the word, because they talked about requels and all sorts. And this is and at one point they're talking about all the they're all sitting there like the suspects in a whodunit, right? And they're saying, no, you're so and so. You're the nerdy guy, and and when it comes to Quinn, they say you're the slutty roommate, and she says, sex positive actually, but thanks.
Modern day conventions, which it's fascinating to see kind of how things have changed over the last 20 years, compared to the first Scream, and now here we are at Scream 6. So it's rather neat, I find.
One of the things about the film was when Ghostface was doing his business, he was obviously tall and very strong, right? Which
Indeed.
eliminates some of the suspects, doesn't it? That definitely eliminates some of the suspects. So I had a bit of an issue, but they do that in Scream, and then it turns out it's that, and you think, how could that person have done that? But it's just
with
big plot holes.
With multiple Ghostface characters, I mean, you can always say, they switched out, but I mean, I agree with you. If you think about it too much, you can easily pick this apart.
Well, that's kind of how Scream gets its pass in terms of making it difficult to work out who it is, because in previous films you see one of the actors who could have been Ghostface interact in an environment where Ghostface is also present, and vice versa. And so when there's two, you don't know, right? Because that guy or that girl might still be Ghostface, but one of the other Ghostface who's in on it, So it keeps it very well hidden who is responsible, right?
It does,
we also find out Sam's seeing a bloke from across the hall, isn't she?
They call him the hot guy, right?
The hot guy, Danny, who's also big, and there are several characters who are big and strong in this, so it kind of obscures who Ghostface might be. And there's always this reason. Look, I was assigned this room randomly. But you could have fixed it. But I just happen to live here, but you moved in after me. There's all this kind of stuff. So there's always, and they kind of put that front and centre in the film instead of it. It's not subtle, but that's fine. That's fine. Because they're explaining the rules of horror films. So
exactly.
Why wouldn't you hit the nail on the head as soon as it comes up? And it makes sense. It
does, yeah.
Yeah. So
I think it works, and I do enjoy. Like I think Mindy's explanation is, I enjoyed it, but whoa, man, she is so excited in this scene. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Like at first I was like almost overacting, but I think that's just her character, really.
Yeah.
And
no, I don't think it was overacting. I don't think the acting was good.
Yeah.
I think it was meant to be that character. Right?
I think so too, because she's the same way in the last film. When she's kind of showing, she's just
exactly.
She's the excitable nerd. Horror fan. Yes, exactly. And I mean, hey, I'm that too, so I get it. The big go-to about this particular iteration of the rules is this, though. In the new order of horror films, in any sequel, anyone can die. There's no such. Basically, she's saying there's no such thing as like fan armor. Anyone can die in modern, which I'm not sure is entirely true. However, let's go with it, which means we don't know if our main characters are going to die, really. Right.
That's saying that, right? Who is going to die?
And they even say the legacy characters are expendable.
Yes.
So they're like, anyone can die now, which I agree. I don't know that I totally agree with her theory there, and we'll talk about that at the end, perhaps. But, it's kind of true, I guess.
Yeah. And then they're all kind of in an apartment talking, and suddenly Ghostface that just attacks, and he's like looking for it. There's all business where he's in a window, and another one can see him in the window. The boyfriend across the hall can see him in the window and sort of trying to phone.
I thought that was
cool. It was very cool.
And the ladder that she's got to go across, which
Well, the first attack, Quinn. Quinn appears to have been brutalised, and they all kind of try and get away while Ghostface is attacking, and they get out through a window by holding a ladder across. They're quite high up, but a ladder to the apartments across the way, and they're kind of crawling across the ladder. But what happens is Mindy's girlfriend, Annika, is the last one out, and Ghostface keeps rocking her ladder, and she falls to her death, basically, right?
Yeah, not a fun way to go.
Yeah.
He's actually shaking the ladder like very, very violently. Like at first, it almost made me laugh because it was just so overdone. But I was like, well, if you're trying to throw a person off the ladder, I guess this is how you would do it. And in the end, she does fall to her death. And yeah, pretty brutal stuff, man. They don't shy away from the blood or the violence at all in this. Much like Scream 5, we talked about how the violence level is amped up. And it's definitely of that same variety in here. You get really brutal stabbings, and it all looks pretty realistic, I have to say.
Yeah, it was well done. It is a horror film. It's not scary, but it's a horror film, so it's bloody.
Indeed.
Right?
Yeah.
Then they get and he also leaves another mask behind, which is from, I can't remember which film, but one of the films. It might have been
I can't
5.
either.
I'm not sure. So he's leaving behind masks from different eras of Scream, really. And then Gal gives him a call and says she was investigating it and she found this weird shrine to sort of Scream, sort of the murders in Scream and Stab as well. There's references. I think there's the references. It's an abandoned theatre. It's very giallo. This abandoned theatres with weird stuff in.
I would live in this theater, Mark. I thought this
with
was
all
cool.
those. I thought they were going to use. There was a thing where there were different Ghostface mannequins with different masks around the theatre, and I thought they were going to use that where it would turn out you think it's just a mannequin but it's one of them, but they don't really use that, do they? I was expecting it, but
they don't really.
As far as I can remember, they don't use that.
No.
So and there's there's pictures, and we see pictures of like Dewey and things like that, and Gal's kind of upset. Well, she's keeping it in, but she's bothered.
Yeah, I mean, Gail is she's a tough cookie, as they say, and it's true. Like, she's obviously sad about Dewey's death, but she's moving forward with her life, and
she's got a boyfriend. He's like a fitness guy, it looks like.
He's like a college kid almost. Or maybe
she's
a young,
quite a bit
young
younger.
adult. I mean, I think, that's what Gail would do. That's exactly what Gail would do.
But then she gets a call from him, doesn't she? From Ghostface, who starts taunting her about Dewey and stuff like this. And she's sort of going, come for me then. And he turns up immediately.
Yeah. I think this is the best scene in the movie, personally. Just, oh man. And I mean, Ghostface is always saying just really mean, cruel things, and the stuff about Dewey here, really brutal. And I remember thinking, oh, is this it for Gail? And I think that's exactly what you're designed to think. Because, Dewey bit it last film. Is Gail going to bite it this film?
Yeah, and her boyfriend gets slaughtered pretty quickly, doesn't he? And then he attacks her and he's kind of trying to stick a knife in it. It goes in her shoulder, doesn't it? But then Sam and Tara turn up and manage. I've forgotten how they do it, but they kind of get rid of him, don't they?
I think they
escape.
shoot at him.
Oh, okay, they get a gun out. That's right, they get a gun out.
Yeah, because Gail had the gun.
We should have mentioned earlier, they get chased into a small grocery shop, don't they? And
by very first scene.
And the shopkeeper pulls out a shotgun and starts shooting at Ghostface. But Ghostface managed to get the shotgun and shoots the shopkeeper.
I was trying to think, Mark, is there any other iteration of Scream where Ghostface has gotten a hold of a gun before? I think this may be the first.
I don't think so. I think it's always knives is his thing.
Yeah, I think so too, I thought this was kind of cool. I don't know that he would have actually used it to, like, kill the sisters, but I think as far as a device where he's, like, hunting them and, trying to lure them out was pretty good. Yeah,
it was kind of cool. I think Ghostface always uses knives. I've got a feeling there's the rope is involved in one or two of the films too, but I can't remember.
I believe so.
So they manage to rescue Gal, take her to hospital, but then Kirby phones them and says, "Look, I've got some stuff that you've got to meet me. I've got to show you something." But don't they? On the way, hold on, I'm trying to think. On the way there, Mindy is separated from them, but she's in the same carriage as the nerdy fella who's Nathan, is it? Hold on.
The white nerdy guy.
Who kind of fancies her, and she knows it, and she's like, and we see him sort of watching her, not necessarily because he fancies her, but he's trying to, keep an eye on her, I guess. but she's kind of fed up. She doesn't want to be near him.
Because they suspect him at this point.
Oh, by the way, it's Halloween, so there's a lot of people dressed up as Ghostface, as well as this, that, and the other, so that doesn't help. But then suddenly she notices one of the Ghostface moving towards her rapidly. And it's funny because we don't see Nathan, so I thought, that must be Nathan then, right? But then when she does get stabbed by the Ghostface and the Ghostface leaves, we do then see Nathan, so it wasn't Nathan.
Yeah, at that point I was like, oh, well, I guess it's not, because it's easy. We'll talk about who we thought it was here at the end, but it's easy to, I mean, even she makes the point earlier in the film. She says, yeah, you're a suspect because you're not in the core friend group or something along those lines. And, you're an outsider, basically, of, what do they call it? Like, not the Fantastic Four, but something like the Fantastic Four, like we're the, basically the 4 survivors of the previous film.
Yeah.
So so he's a suspect, and now it's like, okay, well, I guess he was not the guy, and also he helps her. I like her commentary because he says something like, "Oh man, I got it wrong again."
Yeah. While they're in the, because Kirby then sort of says, look, we've got to trap him here. This is a trap zone. We're going to lock ourselves in and we're going to trap him here and all this, that, and the other. However, Sam then gets a phone call from the detective, Quinn, who we should have mentioned is Quinn's father. Did we say that? It's Quinn's father, who's, deeply traumatised by his... He comes out of the scene where she was murdered and sort of... He's deeply traumatised, but he's... I think he says, I'm off the case now. I've got to be off the case now because of this, But
they do.
But it doesn't matter. I'm still. I want to hunt him down and get him because what he did to my daughter and all this. So while they're in there, and Kirby
even makes the comment like, "Oh, like you kill, like you hurt my family, I kill you," or something like that. And I was like, "Oh, dang, man!"
Yeah,
he's
man.
Hardcore.
But it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me.
Oh no, I mean, obviously, you mess with my family, Yeah.
But while they're there, Kirby's setting all this up and lock them in to try and saying, we need to do this to protect them. But Wayne then phones Sam and says, "Where are you?" And she sort of says, "Well, we're in a theatre." And he says, "Did Kirby take you there? She got kicked out of the FBI 3 months ago because she was obsessed with you two." So then they think Kirby might, and then Kirby's like, "Whatever he's telling you is a lie." So you got this. We don't know what's going on, and we're locked in this place, and they've got guns. Both of them have got guns, right?
Indeed. Yeah.
Then
that's when things start heating up because you're like, okay, we're dwindling down now to our final suspect list. And
now I never thought it was Kirby. I have to say, I never thought it was Kirby alone.
Really?
Because, well, not alone. Because
not alone.
The earlier Ghostface was way too big and strong. Because Kirby is quite small. But then what happens is Wayne, they kind of got a Mexican standoff where they're sort of both accusing each other of being involved, and then suddenly Wayne shoots Kirby, and he shows that he's one of the Ghostface.
Indeed.
And in fact, we also find out Quinn isn't dead at all. That was just a set-up, and when he came out the murder scene, it was just a put on. Quinn, it was all faked. So Quinn's one of the Ghostface, but the other one is the nerdy guy who's called Ethan. Ethan is the so essentially the guy who died as the Ghostface in the last film is also Wayne's son. So they are all there getting revenge. It's a revenge story. They're killing people left, right, and centre, but it's revenge, right? So it doesn't matter who dies. It's just, I have problems with things like that, but it's a horror film.
Now, did you suspect the police guy?
No, I think it was a good twist.
Really? Okay.
I didn't, but I just knew it was a big guy, so I was trying to work it out. So the other contenders were the good-looking guy across the thingy. Or possibly Nathan, and it turns out Nathan was one of them, right? So I was kind of close, but I wasn't there. But yeah,
I had it right with the.
But I actually, saying that, I did call it before they revealed it was Quinn. Quinn's still alive. That was a setup.
Oh, nice. Okay, see, I didn't call that. I was like, okay, it's the police chief, and I think it's Kirby. I think they're working together, but I was wrong. You know, so it was pretty cool.
Yeah,
I say the police chief, but I think he was just a detective.
And it makes sense because his son died in the last one, so it's a revenge story, which is always problematic for me because. It's like they do it. The first Scream, they're kind of doing it for fun, which makes more sense than the later ones, which is I just wanted to copy this for whatever reason. Though the one where it's the mothers involved made a lot of sense, which was 3, I think. Right? Was it? 3?
I think so. Sounds right.
Yeah. That made sense too. That was
well done because I didn't call that in 3 back in the day.
And then there's various fighting going on, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh, we do get a scene before it all kicks off where Sam, the ghost of her father, turns up as a reflection in a mirror, which is how he often turns up. Yeah. Sort of saying,
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Accept your birth. It's all about this is your birthright. You got to just pick up the knife. And when at one point, Sam turns up with the knife, and Tara's going, "What are you doing with that?" You know, she is really not happy about it.
Yeah.
Because. So there's a big fight and the bad
Lots
guys
of
die.
Chasing,
right? Yeah. The injuries are to Kirby, got shot. Chad got stabbed. Mindy got stabbed. Gal got stabbed. But then we see a scene where Sam's just looking at the Ghostface mask that belonged to her father for a while, and then she just throws it down. And the film winds up. Yeah. It was fun. It was interesting to bring back Skeet Ulrich again as Billy Loomis. That was kind of cool.
It was. And they comment. They comment that like Gail has survived and the other girl has survived as well. Who was in the previous film. In fact, she shows up at the very end. I was like, really? She got stabbed like in the stomach. I don't think you're going to be walking around after that. That made me be like, you
ain't going to be walking around after being stabbed. But you ain't going to die. It's one of those places you tend not to die as long as you're treated correctly. It's not like in the heart or something, right?
Oh, yeah, if you get it in the heart, that's it.
Yeah. Or a major vein or artery. So I quite enjoyed this. I thought it was I'm trying to think, is there any other bits we missed? Because there was some interesting stuff throughout. I'm sure we probably missed a few things that are probably worth talking about if I'd have made more notes.
I should have made proper notes too, but I watched this yesterday, and I enjoyed it. I wanted to be fresh for the show in my mind.
I watched it a few days ago. Yeah. I have to say I really liked Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega as the sisters. I thought they were particular standouts.
I think so,
but there was some comedy fun stuff in this that kind of felt like the original film. It had that, I don't know, slightly Joss Whedon vibe, snappy, Buffy vibe. Snappy dialogue and stuff like that. Jenna Ortega I always like. I really liked her in X. We saw her in X, didn't we? And
we did.
She was in Wednesday, the Netflix series about Wednesday Addams, and she was particularly good in that as well. That's a recommend from me, that series.
I've heard good things, so I need to check that out at some point.
Between the sisters at the beginning, but once it all kicked off, that was kind of forgotten, and they kind of just went ahead. It just rolled on. And it was pretty punchy all the way through. I mean, it had its quiet moments, but you want quiet moments in a film like this. You don't want it all intense all the time because it gets monotonous then, doesn't it? That kind of thing. You need your ups and downs. So,
I agree.
Solid film.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was fun. Should we go ahead and rate it, Mark?
Yeah, let's rate it and then also put it in where we've put our ordering of the Scream franchise and see how we go with that. But yeah, go on. You rate it first.
Okay, I don't think I liked it quite as much as you. I enjoyed it, though. I really enjoyed it. And I would suggest people see it. But I don't think it's as strong as the previous film, as I said earlier. And I don't think it's the strongest in the franchise. That being said, I think it is very, very well done, and I think that fans of slashers and fans of Scream in particular will enjoy this, even though it's not particularly scary. But there again, really, are any of the Screams really scary? So,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna give it a solid 3 out of 5.
3 out of 5. Yeah, I give it a 3.5 out of 5. I thought it was a definite step up for me from 5, Scream 5, and I quite liked it. One of the things I hadn't mentioned, actually, is that I quite liked some of the music throughout. There was quite a cool song near the end as well that I really liked. I think it was a Nick Cave song. That was kind of fun.
Yeah.
They were quite brief. But yeah, it was fun. And I enjoyed it greatly. Where would you put it on your list of Scream movies? Give us give us top to bottom or bottom to top, whichever suits you.
Okay, I'm just trying to remember them all here. So I
could
think,
go do mine first if you prefer. I don't mind.
Oh no, it's okay. I'm gonna still say for me the first one is still the best. I think then I would probably put 5 in there because I really like,
wow. Okay.
Yeah, and I really like 5, and then pretty much in order from there.
Okay.
I do feel like they. Now, which one is the one with the mother? Is
3, I think.
That's 3. Okay. I always get it.
Three.
I always get it confused because I always think that the third one is the one in Hollywood, but I think that's the fourth one.
No, that's no. 3. No, you're right. Actually, no. 3 is the Hollywood one. 4.
So it's the second.
I think the second one's the mother. I'm really good. I know the second one's really good.
Right. so I would say 1, 2, 5, and then the rest. Yeah, then in order. And
okay,
I think they're fun. How about you, Mark?
For me, 1 is the best. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Then actually, my favourite after that is 3. I'm a big fan. I know 3 isn't considered well, but I just like what they did with the meta in 3. In there, they had what's her name? Oh, the actress playing Gal. Thinking like Gal and acting like Gal with Gal there. That was really funny.
Yeah,
I just found that really funny. I love this actress and I can't think of her name. Anyway, so I'd actually put 3 as my second favourite. That's how much I like it. After that
high up.
After that is 2. So it's 1, 3, 2. Then I really like song. Can I say 6? 6 I like. So this is 4th in the list for me. And then it's 4 and 5. So 5's my bottom, whereas it was your second. That's amazing.
Yeah. I'd say third because I do want to say I think Scream 2 is up there too with the mother. Yeah. So the third on my list, but this is a very solid entry for sure.
Yeah, there's no real weak films in this series. It's not like Hellraiser or Jason where there's particularly weak entries.
Yeah, there's some bad ones for sure.
Yeah,
I think that now some people don't like the Hollywood setting for this, and I kind of understand that because you're like, it's a Hollywood thing, but I thought that kind of worked too, especially.
Sorry, do you mean for 3?
For 3, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I quite like that, and the thing is also this number 6, New York horror slasher. I'm thinking. Well, I tend to go Jason Takes Manhattan, actually.
I like that film.
Not that he's in New York very long, but it's very striking. Those 10 minutes at the end is very striking. But obviously there's other New York slashes. There's, Driller Killer and Maniac, say.
Maniac.
But those are really skeevy films, whereas Scream 6 is a bit lighter than those, I have to say. We're in the same ballpark, I think, for this.
Yeah, we're very close.
I'd flip 5 and 6 in my estimation compared to you. That's right.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, let's get on to the feedback, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it. So
I posted in the UNH Facebook group that we're covering this film. Anyone got any feedback? So I'll just read through some of this. So first response, John Sounder. Hi, John.
John, how's it going?
What he says is, I remember Scream wasn't just credited with bringing slash films back to the mainstream media, but it gave the horror genre as a whole a bit of a boost. Do you think that's true or not?
Yeah.
Horror was suffering in the 90s.
90s. '96,
Yeah.
horror was pretty much dead. I mean, you're right.
Yeah,
Like,
horror was really suffering. There wasn't much going on in horror, and it wasn't very good. There are exceptions. There's Hellraiser's a 90s film, I think. There's People Under the Stairs, things like that. But it seemed to me that horror kind of switched more to TV. The good stuff was on TV with the X-Files and Twin Peaks and stuff like that.
Tales from the Crypt, you know.
Yeah,
so it was
exactly.
all really on TV during the 90s. I agree with you there, Mark.
But I think it came roaring back in the 2000s, and it's been with us very solidly since. But yeah, Scream was one of the big ones in the 90s for horror, and an interesting, it's meta stuff, and everyone was credited with being it like, oh yeah, no one's done this meta stuff. There definitely have been meta horror films. There's a Bob Hope film from the 40s which is meta, right? Called Ghostbreakers, where he plays an actor in horror radio dramas, and he keeps talking about the rules of is this. You know, what happened. Or it might have been Cat and the Canary. It probably was Cat and the Canary, actually. But this is not entirely original, but it was fresh for a lot of people, and it brought a lot of young people to horror.
I mean, it definitely influenced me. It's not the first horror movie I had seen, but, you know, I wasn't thinking a lot about horror in the 90s either. I was, you know, I had seen, like, classic horror films at that point, but I think as far as the modern horror genre, like, for people, you know, around my age, that's probably one of the reasons I latched onto horror in my college years, you know, because I was definitely influenced by it. So.
Yeah, I think what happened is there was a lot of money flowing in the 80s. So in horror, we were getting, 30, 40 memorable horror films a year. Whereas in the 90s, it was like maybe 2 or 3 a year.
Yeah, I
think it had something to do with. I've always had a suspicion it's something to do with cocaine. I think the film industry was super fueled by cocaine in the 80s. So crazy ideas were getting greenlit because people were off their heads on coke. And I think things calmed down 92, 93 because you just feel that. Okay, I'm not seeing a crazy film about, you know, a monster that lives in a basket carried around by his brother, or I'm not seeing a film where an alien comes and sucks the juice out of people's brains because of this. You know, it just calmed down. There were other places which were doing great horror, though, like Italy and stuff like that in the 90s.
That's a good point.
But anyway, let me go on with John, because John actually references some of this stuff. So, I personally remember Peter Jackson films were going strong, and you were able to find a small press zines like Cemetery Dance or The Horror Show in local bookstores. I think it's true that slasher films took a backseat to police procedural dramas for a brief moment. What do you all think? I think maybe Silence of the Lambs might have sealed things because it was so good. And it was mainstream. And it's one of those things we're saying, oh no, it's, it's not really a horror film. People that were sniffy and snobby about horror films didn't want to call The Silence of the Lambs a horror film.
Oh, it's a horror film.
So they could say, and I even hear people saying, oh, Alien's not quite a horror film because of this. Basically, they're saying, oh, it's well made and I like it, therefore it can't be a horror film. It's kind of that kind of thinking. Joe Bob has something to say about this kind of thing. I can't remember his exact words, but it's along the lines of, that's just people that don't like to admit they like a horror film. That's what it is.
Yeah, and there are plenty of people out there who are particularly in the 90s, they did look down on horror. I mean, horror was like seen as the redheaded stepchild, as they say, you know.
Yeah, there's only been a couple of horror films which were actually rated by anyone outside of horror fans, I think, which are probably The Exorcist and Silence of the Lambs. I mean, but in the horror, we're richer than, you know, we have a rich and varied sort of cornucopia of movies to watch, and if you don't like them, fine. Exactly. Don't try and relabel ones just so that you can feel comfortable with it. That's ridiculous. Right?
Exactly.
And like this term post-horror, it's ridiculous. It's horror, right? It's horror.
It's horror, man. You know.
Yeah. And then there was
thriller, if you want to call them.
Then there was a response to John from Michael Berlin. He says, I definitely remember a very dry spell when it came to horror. I recall being excited for Scream because of that. And then John replies, I do remember the horror genre as a label went away in a lot of bookstores, but you could still find horror regardless. I don't remember that. In the UK, it never went away. There was always, in the bookstores, there's always been a horror genre, and there always will be, I reckon. Stephen King alone pretty much keeps that section alive.
You know, Stephen King was still really big throughout the 90s.
Yeah, we must remember King.
We must, indeed.
Yes,
and I mean, he is one of the geniuses in horror for sure. God bless him.
Yeah,
I hope he's going for a long time.
A great writer, Stephen King.
Absolutely.
Okay, so and indeed, a lot of his weird short stories and stuff were being adapted. I mean, Maximum Overdrive was an early 90s. Now that to me is what I'm talking about when I talk about cocaine. As the instigator of filmmaking. In fact, Stephen King himself says, I was off my head on cocaine while I was... He directed that, off his head on cocaine. Doesn't remember a single thing about it. So there you go, yeah. Still a fun movie, though, right?
Oh, still a fun one, for sure. I mean, I love 80s horror and earlier, too, but 80s horror... I mean, all of the period, like, I can't pick one time period where I'm just like, that's the greatest ever. You know, I love the classics, but then I love the 80s, which I guess are now considered classics as well, you know, and the 90s. But yeah, cocaine, as Dave Chappelle says, cocaine is a hell of a drug.
Hell of a drug. And I'm sure a lot of... and there was a lot of money sluiced around because of video, right? Straight to video and stuff like that. So all of that money and cocaine just fueled a massive amount of film production.
Indeed.
In exploitation cinema as well as horror. So, yeah. Okay, all right then. So the next post was from Kevin Matthews. Hi, Kevin. What he says is, for as much as I love most of the Scream movies, including the fun Scream 4, I was absolutely not a fan of Scream 2022. Also, Aka 5 Cream. I don't remember it being called that, but Scream 5, right? But instead of the S, it was a 5.
Gotcha.
That immediately became my new least favourite in the franchise. In brackets, not including the first season of the TV show.
Yeah, and I haven't seen the TV show.
No, I haven't, no. And I wasn't looking forward to this next instalment, aka Ghostface Takes Manhattan, which is a very apt title, actually. Thankfully, being a completist is sometimes a good thing. I was glad I watched Scream 6, and it's already one of my favourites, with my provisional ranking just now being 1, 4, 6, 2, 3, and 5. That's his order, which is similar to mine. I put 3 a lot higher than that. It's far from perfect, and I still have issues with the core cast, but the set pieces and the general vibe of the film, which feels a bit more relaxed and less reflexive and defensive than the last time, it really was. I agree with that, yes. It just feels like they've relaxed into it, so it makes it much less setting up the pieces to do the next set of moves film. It's we're doing the moves film for me.
Yeah.
There are at least 4 great sequences that help make this a memorable Scream film. Yes, indeed. We didn't really skirt on some of these sequences, but they were fun and terrific.
Absolutely.
When Ghostface on the attack, it's quite exciting. And you never quite know what's going to happen. And the fact I didn't feel the rest of the film pale in comparison after such a strong start. And he makes a note about this start. He says, the strongest opening since the first film for me, and a genuinely interesting and surprising start to proceed. Yep, agree with that.
I agree. Yeah, that was a great start. Absolutely.
Samara even was really good. Like I say, we're going to have to cover Ready or Not at some point. It's about as good a compliment as I can give. It's an unexpected return to form, as playful as violent as you could hope, with the extra fun of watching the parallel strands between this new trilogy and the original 3 movies come into sharp focus in a way that provides one more layer to a film series known for being so self-aware and self-referential. Great post, Kevin.
Man, wow. Yeah, thank you all. And thank you, Kevin, man. I agree, especially with his point about the start of the film just being so strong. I mean, yeah, that has to be probably the strongest start since the first film.
It was a very strong... There's been quite a few memorable ones. There was that one where they kept restarting it that was kind of funny because it was it was basically the Stab franchise, wasn't it? And we didn't realise that. That was fun. This reminded me of a post I read a couple of years ago I thought, oh man, that's a really good idea. And I couldn't tell you who wrote it, so I can't credit anyone, but it isn't my idea. And someone said, oh man, if they're going to make another film, they should do Stab 1, right? And Stab 1 being about people obsessed with the Scream movie franchise.
Ah.
And referencing that just to make it full meta, which was a great idea, right? It
There
just
you
made me
go.
laugh. Right,
That would be, and maybe they will at some point.
Oh, maybe. Next one was from Bruce Hannon. Hi, Bruce, friend of the... these guys are all friends of the podcast, but Bruce in particular
Indeed.
is also a friend of my own podcast, The Good, The Bad, and the Odd, so I know Bruce quite well. In terms of, he's very interactive. He's great as well.
Indeed.
So Bruce says, there isn't much more I can say that Kevin hasn't already said, so I just pretend I said that. Having said that, he's written loads here, so don't take Bruce at his word here, right? However,
Okay.
So here we go. Settle down. However, as a whole, it is one of my favourite horror franchises for my generation. As much as I love A Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, and Friday the 13th series, they feel more like an 80s version of... They felt more like an 80s version of Guns N' Roses, Bon Jovi, and Aerosmith. But we needed something like Green Day, Nirvana, and The Offspring. Okay, yeah, I see that.
Yeah, I get that.
And yeah, when you think about it, there isn't many new franchises, is there? I mean, there's I've forgotten the name. Is it Insidious? The Warrens.
Oh, yeah.
What films with the Warrens? There's that lot.
Yeah.
They're kind of fun. But there's not many other Scream's the other one, right? Scream's another one. So here we go. As our friend John Sauder alluded to, it sparked interest for a new generation that felt relevant to the 90s audiences. It also pushed momentum for other teen horror movies that I know, such as I Know What You Did Last Summer, Valentine, Cherry Falls, The Faculty, Urban Legend, Final Destination. I mean,
I love Final
etc.
Destination.
Final Destination is the other class one, isn't it? In terms of
We
franchises?
we need to cover those at some point.
I've only seen the first one, and I know that the rest are supposed to be really good, but I've only seen...
I gotta say, I love all of them, Mark.
Okay, I've heard they're really good, and I do
They're
want
all
to
a
get
lot
to
of
them.
fun.
I'm just too busy watching this year's ones. That's the trouble.
Oh yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. As far as Bruce goes on, as far as the latest instalment, I did what the original... Sorry, I'll start again. As far as the latest instalment, it did what the original Scream movie did for me in the 90s. It's really aimed at a new generation of horror fans, some that won't even be born when the first 3 movies were released.
That's hard to believe.
With
Man,
the
I
2
feel old.
recent movies, I felt like Scream 5 was trying to bridge the generation gap or set us up for a reboot. While I enjoyed it, compared to 1, 2 and 4, it was a letdown. I noticed he doesn't mention 3. Interesting. Okay. However, Scream 6 wasn't so burdened by what had gone before and just got on with it. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. It was just getting on with it. Overall, excuse me. Overall, Scream 6 recognised there were long-time fans of the franchise out there, but it's now time to move on. My only complaint about the recent movie, how many times can someone be stabbed without dying? The answer is 1,000,000 times.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
And just because I haven't mentioned Scream 3 at all, I know, Mark, you are a fan. I do like it, and it would still be ahead of 5 and 6 in my order of favourites. So I may as well give you that order now. It's 1, 2, 4, 3, 6, 5. So he puts 5 at the bottom of his list as well. Anyway, I look forward to this episode. The Megan episode was great. Thanks, guys. Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed the Megan one. Yeah, it was fun to record and watch, actually. I've watched it, I think, 3 times now, and I'm going to watch it again at some point more than once. I think it's just one of those fun ones. It's kind of fun to go back to.
Yeah.
Okay.
In my rotation.
I actually responded to this, and I said that's a fair order, but I like 3 way more than most, and like 6 a lot. So I'd go 1, 3, 2, 6, 4, 5, which is what I already said earlier. And Bruce says that's a fair order. I knew 3 would be at the top for you. Ha ha.
Yeah, if you listen to this show, you know us pretty well, right?
Yeah. Even though they have an order, they're still all 7 out of 10 or more. I agree. I think 6 might, for me, dip to like, I mean, we rate out of 5, so 3 out of 5 for me. But otherwise, I think it's batting quite high. It's batting quite high.
Yeah.
Right, so the next comment, and this is the last one, unless one comes in the meantime. Rolf Pickler. Hi, Rolf. And he says, I enjoy Scream 6 a lot. If for nothing else, it gave us a sense of perilous New York City that been the city's reputation for decades. Yeah, go watch About Last Night or After Hours. After Hours is the perfect New York City paranoia nightmare movie, I tell you.
I haven't seen that one.
Well, it's a Scorsese one, but not a very famous one. Is it Scorsese? Yeah, it's Scorsese.
Nice.
And then he goes on. It was, though, my least favourite Ghostface reveal, inevitably highlighting how much the franchise has pulled things out of its arse with little rhyme or convoluted reason. Now, I just want to comment before we go on. Yes, it does. However, I watch Giallo movies, right? So they are about 10 times more sensible than any finale to any Giallo movie. The Giallo movies is like, it's the guy we saw for 10 seconds on a motorbike,
right?
50 minutes into the movie. That's the killer. And you, what?
You just gotta suspend your belief with Giallo films. I love the artistic.
They look great.
Values. They're awesome looking for sure. I'm with you.
He goes on to say, I was also disappointed in Gal's reversion to type versus the character growth we were promised in 5. Though there are interesting questions there, such as, is Gal nothing without Ghostface? Yeah, it's interesting. I thought actually they handled the Gal thing fine. She explained her reasons to the sisters, didn't she? Which I took at face value, and I know they could be just excuses to try and continue making money. But it depends how you take them. It could have had a little more. There could have been more than like 3 lines in the whole film about it. But
could have,
there could have been a small scene about it.
I know when I initially saw her and they mentioned the book, I was like, really? They made her write a book again? Come on, guys. But so I do agree. Like, I don't think they should have had her write a book after the events of the last film. But at the same time, I think people handle grief differently. And I think that Gail is a character who, like, she's got to be on the move, like reporting or writing or pouring herself into something. That character is fascinating in my opinion. And Courtney Cox just has always done such a great job.
Yeah, I think your question is Gal nothing without Ghostface. I think Gal is nothing without her work is a better way to put it. Work is what sets Gal free. I can't see her ever relaxing and being on holiday, say. I just can't see Gal being that person. So, I think Gal is nothing without her work. And Ghostface just happens to take up a lot of her work. I think that's what the answer to that is. That's my opinion.
Very good point. No, I totally agree.
Yeah. So, I think that about winds it up, actually. We recommend, as we said earlier in the show, and we had a lot of fun with this. Not sure what we're doing next time. We need to discuss it off air. But we won't be. Our next show will be in a couple of weeks, I should think. After this is released.
I think we're pretty much batting every 2 weeks now, which I'm really happy. I was counting last night. We're really close to 100 shows, Mark. We may actually have 100 at this point because there's a few we've had to take down for various reasons over the years. But. Yeah, man, and coming up on 100 episodes, I was like, man, we really have run with this little podcast for a long time, and I feel like we made it to something special. So, and that's because of all the people who listen, and we really do appreciate all of you.
Yeah, it's a milestone. It's an interesting milestone, and unfortunately, we just lost count. We didn't because we don't count them. Some are archived. We've kind of just lost count, but we know there's a lot, right?
Yeah, I was numbering them initially, and then we were recording so consistently at the beginning. I was just like, okay, we're just gonna drop the numbering system here, now you have like seasons in podcasts and stuff, and I'm like, nah, we're not doing that.
No, I'm not doing that. I'm gonna do it with my anthologic. I am intending to do season 1 when it ends. I have a little break, but I've still got 2 years off until I finish season 1. I think my first season will be 250 episodes. That's what I think. And I'm in the hundreds now. So yeah.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah, but they're very short. You know,
well
they're
done.
only 10 minutes, so you know it's a different.
But I think that's one of the great things about them because they're almost like bite size. You know, they just
they're
give you
intended
enough.
to be. They're intended to be.
Yeah.
Yes. I feel like I'm a curator, like a museum curator of anthology TV. That's what I'm doing with that. So I'm just trying to explore every show I can find, and some are just so obscure, ridiculously obscure, right? I cannot believe how much anthology TV. Anyway, I'm getting off topic here for what we're doing. But yeah, it's a great show. So we'll have a think. I think at some point we might throw out what I'd ask you guys what you'd like us to cover next, and we'll go with that if we can get it. If there's any particularly strong ones, but we still got a few strong ones that I talked about in the 2022 that we wanted to cover.
Indeed, yeah.
So we've got a few of those.
Yeah, that's the great thing about the horror genre is there's just always something to talk about. You know, I love the horror movie genre because it does that, and you know, I almost feel like horror is in a way kind of like the new action film in this era because you don't really get 80s action films. Obviously, different genres. You know, but you have scares instead of action, right? And I don't know, man.
I don't know, man. I'm getting onto it. No, there are some really good action films coming out, but not in the volumes of the 80s, but the quality.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like there's your John Wicks.
And the Fast and Furious films.
And things
those
like
are
that.
fun.
I think those are pretty solid. But yeah, horror, like I say, when I reviewed 2022, I could not believe the level of quality. There was very few duds.
Yeah.
You know?
We're very lucky to have just so much quality stuff coming through because really in the 90s, as we talked about earlier, like it was television, like you watched, you know, your X-Files or, you know, Tales from the Crypt every week. And you kind of, with Tales from the Crypt in particular, you hoped it was a good one because they had a lot of duds too. But man, now
but they're always fun, right? They
are always fun. Even the bad ones are fun.
Yeah. It totally was. Funny enough, you should mention it. And then I'm going off topic again. I actually watched Demon Knight, the Tales from the Crypt movie.
Oh,
Demon
classic!
Knight, for the first time a couple of weeks ago. Terrific.
Nice.
Billy Zane was amazing. You know,
love that film.
We could cover that soon.
We could. Yeah. So many possibilities.
So many. And was that a 90s film, actually? What I think it was.
I think it was, yeah.
Early 90s.
And, you know,
95.
You have, like, Tales from the Hood from the 90s, too. That's another one I absolutely love.
I have to say, when you start picking through it, you actually find quite a lot of good horror films from the 90s. I just think the sheer volume of the 80s is quite overwhelming, and quality. And when I say quality, I don't mean they were fantastic films. I think they were totally watchable, enjoyable, fun films. That was the thing, right?
Yeah. Some of them were just off their rocker. Cocaine-fueled nightmares, you know?
Yeah, indeed.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Anyway, let's wind out there because we have spun off on our general show. Another thing we could possibly do is something we talked about, and this was a suggestion from Bruce, right? Bruce Hannon. Because in my other podcast, we do what we call comfy chair episodes, where we just talk about all the things we watched that month or the last 2 months.
Yeah,
you and I could
fun.
do that. I do watch a lot of horror films apart from the ones we talk about. I watch a lot of older horror films too.
Yeah, that's kind of what I do as well.
And Bruce suggested we called it Sit on the Electric Chair.
I like it. Maybe that's what we will do next episode.
Yeah, we should call it Old Sparky or something. Right?
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So we just talk about 5 films each or TV shows or something that we've watched recently and just talk about in more general, less structured, but it's kind of still fun. But we could do that. Let's think about that and we'll see.
We'll
anyway,
think about it. Yeah, sounds good.
Do you want to lead us out?
Yeah, let's do it. Well, Mark, thanks so much to you, man. It's always a pleasure. And thanks to our listeners. We really appreciate all of you taking the time out of your busy schedules. I know everyone is so busy these days, especially post-COVID. But we appreciate it. And Hopefully, we'll continue doing this for a long, long time to come, and we're going to let Dracula have the final word here. But until next time, I've been Jason.
And I've been Mark.
And we'll see you next time right here on the United Nations of Horror.
The United Nations of Horror is a podcast about all things horror. From thrillers of yesteryear to today's modern horror, we are here to present fun and intelligent conversation about the genre films we love. Join us and please help spread the word about the United Nations of Horror podcast and videocast to horror fans across the globe. Find the podcast on all fine podcasting services. Join us on Facebook by simply going to facebook.com and entering in United Nations of Horror. You can also find us on YouTube by going to youtube.com and searching for United Nations of Horror podcast.